Personality quizzes are a dime a dozen on the internet these days. You can learn what Disney character you are, what house you'd be sorted to in Harry Potter, what class you would be in a role-playing game, and so on. Now, some people delve deeper than this, and I'm one of those people. They develop an intense fascination with typology theories spawned from the work of the psychologist Carl Gustav Jung, such as MBTI, the Keirsey temperament disorder, or socionics. They learn from a variety of authors about the spiritual symbol of the Enneagram and the personality types at each point, which can grow and regress. They study typologies that find patterns in physiology, romantic relationships, or career choice. They might even study astrology or other exotic ways of categorizing people and learning about their inner qualities and their destiny. What is the engine behind this niche but enthusiastic area of the internet? Is this a waste of time? Is it worth getting even more people interested? Like many teenagers, I had a rough time growing up, finding a sense of identity and self-esteem, understanding my strengths and weaknesses, and learning how to relate to my peers. For many young adults, this is a process of pain, sweat, and tears, and the promise of being able to understand myself and others drew me like a moth to a flame. I did not understand why I was so introverted that I liked to spend time in solitude and needed to recharge so much from social interaction, something that I rarely saw in other people my age. On pain of this eccentricity, and the fact that I was an enthusiastic fantasist and nerd, I was regularly pressured to conform, or otherwise treated poorly. This only exacerbated my tendencies, making me timid and secretive as well as introverted. When I learned about personality types like INTJ and INTP, it was like I'd encountered an oasis in the desert. For once, I saw people like me being spoken about with legitimacy and respect, rather than feeling like I was some alien who would never find a true friend. I could not get enough of this material on the Myers-Briggs, and my lifelong interest in typology was set. In typology, I found my self-esteem again, and with that, a lot of self-confidence, independence of mind, and the hunger to explore more and understand myself and others even better. Now, I didn't find my final answers in that initial foray. It was only a beginning. I went through a phase, which I found to be really common in typology enthusiasts, in which I was haughtily disdainful towards extroverted sensors, people who are incorrigibly uninterested in abstract things and have more everyday practicality and concerns. Without guidance and life experience, typologies can fuel a sense of resentment, fatalism, and exclusivity, especially when you've had abusive experiences like I'd had, which you are then prompted to generalize in unfair ways. I was also never quite satisfied with any of my personality descriptions that I came across. When I looked more into it, even the underlying theories failed to give me the secure sense of identity that I was looking for. I became interested in even more exotic theories, from gurus and faraway countries, delved into philosophy and epistemology, and met remarkable people who were intensely struggling with similar idealistic quests, like myself. With trial and error, soul-shuddering experiences, and toiling through mountains of confusion, I eventually came to a much more mature viewpoint. Typology has transformed and constituted a huge chunk of my life, and my experiences in the field have been unusually diverse. They include work with socionics from Russia and Ukraine, the Enneagram of researchers like Catherine Pfeiffer, the objective personality system of Dave Superpowers, the Mojo reading physiological typology of Thomas Chenot, and more besides. To me, typology is like a new world that is flowering into existence, and I'm addicted to being on the cutting edge. It is endlessly fascinating for me to better understand myself and other humans. The vast and intricate connections between ideas that occur in the process of researching typology are akin to the glass bead game of Hermann Hesse, the famous author. The glass bead game is replete with fascinating rules and connections, but the true rules, connections, and nature of the game remain mysterious, and one step beyond our grasp. At least one step, anyway. The siren's call of unraveling another marvelous structure could be just one imaginative leap away, making a connection between seemingly disparate fields. Not everyone will relate to my particular struggles, and my highly intellectual inclinations do not suit everyone. This shouldn't come as any surprise if you've studied any typology. Yet, I remain convinced that typology could offer humans and society far more than an intellectual game. Some teenagers are extroverted, or focused on more grounded things than I was. They might have good self-esteem, but not understand how to function optimally as a leader, what life path would be most promising, or how to get along with their friends or lovers. I think it is obvious that more people should know that there are people who have spent their lives studying systemic patterns in different kinds of humans, and that this is something available and beneficial to learn about. By engendering understanding, it stands to improve relationships between family, friends, and coworkers. It is an excellent tool in therapy because it will show people that there are others who share in their difficulties, and it offers structures which can frame these difficulties and make them easier to understand. It would certainly help people work better with one another, whether hiring a business team, instructing students with particular learning styles, or managing responsibilities among peers in a project. By itself, typology is an utterly fascinating field of discovery for those with a scientific bent, or those who seek greater self-understanding. Typologists have already come up with many clever methods to diagnose type, involving double-blind procedures, physical and emotional signals, simple and complex sorting dichotomies, identifying underlying functions which drive behavior, statistical tests and techniques, careful logical argumentation, examination of the neocortex through EEG, recognizing deep mythological themes and psychological complexes, etc. Merely to sort through all these methods and synthesize them into a perspective by which we can orient ourselves is a demanding task. There could be new methods of identifying type which await us in neuroscience, physiology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, scientific experiments, and genetics for those who are enterprising. There are also a variety of delicate philosophical and epistemological issues in typology about which we must think very carefully, such as: how does type relate to the structures of consciousness? How does type relate to our biology? What is the origin of type? How much should type relate to our identity and self-conception? How certain can we be of the categories and abstractions used in typology? What is the nature of type? What does it imply about the nature of reality? How do we distinguish between typing and stereotyping? Even with all its wonders, typology needs to be treated with caution. As I mentioned, when I was an embittered teenager, my naive understanding of typology led to increased resentment, a sense of fatalism, and toxic exclusivity in me. Given the reasons that some people become interested in typology in the first place, it is surely understandable that it might lead to frustration with a world that is not so understanding. Carl Gustav Jung, whose work as a prolific inspirer of typologies, did not originally craft his typology for the use of laymen. Jung offers his sagacious cautions, given his intensive research and experience with the problems of typology. As a rule, only careful observation and a weighing of the evidence permits a sure classification. Clear and simple though the fundamental principle of two opposing attitudes may be, nevertheless their concrete reality is complicated and obscure, for every individual is an exception to the rule. Therefore, one can never give a description of a type, no matter how complete, which applies to more than one individual, despite the fact that thousands might, in a certain sense, be strikingly described thereby. Conformity is one side of man, uniqueness is the other. In human life, every individual is an exception to rules, more exceptional as his or her individuality is more strongly marked. Every individual is an exception to the rule, Jung wrote. To stick labels on people at first sight, in his view, was nothing but a childish parlor game. If we do not fall into stereotyping and allow typology to make us simplistic judges of other people, then the delicate balance between understanding typology categories and understanding individuals can lead to a more sophisticated typology and a more discerning treatment of human beings in general. The epistemological issues in typology are doubtlessly difficult, But throwing up our hands in resignation about observing systemic patterns in humans and effectively categorizing them is an unrealistic, defeatist solution. Humans will always try to understand one another, and it therefore behooves us to do it thoughtfully, ethically, and professionally. If you study the best works on typology, you will see that substantial progress has already been made in this regard, and it remains to be imagined how much more progress awaits. Although people clearly have different tendencies from one another, which can be observed with practice, it is just as cruel and undignified to employ these tendencies in putting someone down as it would be to put someone down because of their skin color, their sex, or their height. To the compassionate and constructive mind, typology offers a new way to understand humans, and when we properly understand ourselves and others, we have a place from which to grow. All told, typology stands to make the world a kinder, smoother, and more interesting place, in which humans are keen observers of one another who can communicate effectively and make mindful decisions. It is a road back to ourselves.